The best way to do it would probably be to give me back this diagram. If you want to write it out like an essay or an outline, that's fine, but I've always found that this is the easiest way to see it. DNA stores the information. It is transcribed into RNA. More on that in a minute. RNA gets translated into a peptide chain. That whole process is called gene expression. That is the simplest it can be. You may have another step. Processing and assembly. And that gets you the fully functional mature protein. If you have anything go wrong at any point in that process, you're going to end up with either a non-functional protein or no protein at all. And if that's the case, probably dead. DNA can make copies of itself through a process called replication. As long as you have a single strand of the two, you can make a copy. And RNA sometimes cheats. Through a process we call reverse transcription. The normal flow is DNA to RNA to protein. Reverse transcription is where you make a DNA copy from an RNA template. A DNA copy from an RNA template. This whole process is called gene expression. So I ask you to summarize gene expression. That's what you would do. Any questions on that?
So on like those, we could just like copy word to word like that. And
Yep.
that could get great answer.
If I give you question number 3, describe the process of gene expression. You draw that out, you get full credit. Believe it or not, there are several little sub-processes involved here that I'm leaving out. The main key player in all of this is that molecule right there, RNA. What does DNA do?
Stores information.
Stores information. That's all. Period. Bottom line. End of story. What does RNA do? Anybody want to take a stab?
Process of information.
Everything.
Everything. It processes information, it stores information, it transmits information, it transports stuff around the cell, it acts as a structural element, it can even act as an enzyme on occasion. It can combine with proteins. RNA is the most versatile molecule in biology. Write that down, be sure you got it.
Diverse.
It is the most versatile molecule in biology. Remember I said DNA always exists as a double helix, right? You always have two strands. Can RNA be double-stranded? Sure. Can it be single-stranded? Sure. Can it hybridize with DNA and form a DNA RNA hybrid? Sure. You get the idea. RNA is very, very flexible, and it is thought that out of all of these molecules that I have thrown at you, RNA is probably the first one that made life possible. So be sure you get that down.
RNA,
It's the first molecule that made life possible. Basically, by itself, RNA performs just about all of the functions of life. Can it make a copy of itself? Yes. Can it make a protein? Yes. Can it be an enzyme? You see where I'm going with this. And this brings us back to viruses. What is a virus? Here's your definition. A virus is a nucleic acid wrapped in a protein. It is a nucleic acid wrapped up in a protein. Now, if you remember, we talked about cell theory, didn't we? And cell theory had two core principles. We said, number one, that the cell is the basic unit of life, right? Does everybody have that in your notes?
yeah.
And number two, we said that all living things are made up of cells. So where does that leave viruses? Well, let's take a quick look back at what we said all living things were capable of doing.
Reproducing.
Somebody said something. What did you say, Lillian?
Reproducing.
Reproducing. Let's save that one for last.
But we also said viruses are not alive, kind of.
Well, let's get a little bit deeper now that we've got this. We said they respond to their environment, right? If I've got a cold and I sneeze on you, will those viruses respond to their new environment? You'll get sick, won't you? Do they harvest and use energy from the environment around them? Yes, they do. They don't do it directly, they do it from their host. Number three, we said that they maintain homeostasis, right? A constant environment. Viruses can last for years, decades. I have read a report or two out of Russia that says they have isolated viruses that are tens of thousands of years old from the permafrost. Not sure I buy it, but that's definitely a better plot line than Jurassic Park movies.
Does that mean if there's a virus like smallpox that's been eradicated, can it not come back, or can it?
We'll get there. The answer is possibly yes. The last one, what was it, Lillian? You said reproduction. Now here is where some people say viruses are not alive, some people say they are. Viruses cannot reproduce independently of their host. Make sure you get that down. Viruses cannot reproduce independently of their host. They must have a living cell. So what do you think? Living or dead? Or non-living, I guess I should say.
Huh?
Living or non-living?
Dead until they find something living?
Dead until they find something living.
What if you
Sounds like a plot of a bad zombie movie, doesn't it? What'd you say?
Well, if they can't find a living body, they can't reproduce, so they're just isolated until they find it.
Well, let me tell you about a little thing called a parasite. Y'all ever heard of those? You heard of tapeworms? A tapeworm has a head to it that has 4 very viciously curved hooks that it uses to literally burrow into the lining of the intestine of its host. It has a reproductive system. It makes eggs. That's all it has. It does not have a digestive system. What are you doing, Mia? I said, what are you doing back there? You're like switching between 2 different highlighters to pen.
Just helps me organize my notes.
Okay. Is it alive? Is that tapeworm alive? Can that tapeworm digest its own food?
Yeah.
No. It does not have a functional digestive system. It doesn't need one. It lives in the gut of a host that has already broken down the food. Do you see where I'm going with this?
So,
Parasites have a tendency to lose systems they don't need. Write that down. You have a question, sir?
so like cordyceps, like, isn't that a parasite or a virus? For, like,
It's a fungus.
Fungus. Does
We'll
that
talk
make-
about cordyceps at a different date.
What was the first thing you said?
We call this parasitic reduction. True or false? All plants are photosynthetic.
False.
Well, you know me, by now I'm tricking you, right? So yes, it is false. Almost all plants are photosynthetic. The ones I did my PhD on are not. They don't have a trace of chlorophyll in them. I asked the question, what happens to the genes responsible for photosynthesis? Any idea? They're gone. So basically, the idea is that viruses essentially have undergone parasitic reduction to the point where rather than need their own cell, they borrow one. Pretty wild. Did you have a question?
Yeah, what was the statement about the parasites? I missed that because I was listening.
Parasitic reduction.
Parasitic reduction.
If you don't need it, you won't maintain it. If you're a tapeworm, you're sitting in the middle of digested food, aren't you? Why maintain a digestive system when you don't need it? Y'all ever heard of cave fish? Fish that live in underground streams and lakes. Almost all of them are blind. Several species don't even have eyes because they don't need them. They're always in the dark. There's a very interesting group of fish that live down along the Rio Grande, northern Mexico, southern Texas, that area. And they have 2 forms. One of them lives above ground and they're visual. The other one lives below ground and is completely blind. They don't even form eyes. They actually end up creating taste buds all over their body. So they can literally taste the water on any side. How wild is that? Yeah, life has got a lot of weird stuff out there, doesn't it? There's something else called an endogenous retrovirus, ERVs.
How you spell it? I'm so sorry. Oh, that's.
I said they're ERVs. You asked. I thought you were being snarky.
I thought you meant like the whole.
Endogenous, ENDOGENOUS. Endogenous.
Yeah, I was meaning the first one, not the EOD.
If you say ERVs, that's fine because I know what you're talking about. These are viruses that have infected living cells and taken up residence. Normally, the life cycle of a virus is this. The virus comes into contact with the host. It injects its DNA or RNA, as the case may be.
It injects what?
It's nucleic acid, DNA, or RNA. Once it's inside the host, it does one of two things. Number one, it starts getting translated into viral proteins. Number two, it actually incorporates itself into the genome of the host. It actually cuts and pastes itself directly into the DNA of the host. Once it is triggered, it's just like any other gene, but instead of making normal genes that the host uses, normal proteins, it starts making viral proteins. It literally hijacks the cell. Once the cell is more or less full, it assembles new viruses and blows the cell up. It literally ruptures it, and multiple new viruses come out. Questions? All of those new individual viruses can infect more cells. They repeat the process, and eventually either the host's immune system takes them out or they kill the host. That is called the lytic cycle, L-Y-T-I-C, the lytic cycle. The other variation, do you have a question, Carol?
Yeah, is the lytic cycle the whole process of the virus?
Yes.
Okay.
The difference between the lytic cycle and the lysogenic cycle, L-Y-S-O-G-E-N-I-C, lysogenic. L-Y-S-O-G-E-N-I-C. Once the viral DNA is incorporated, it's like a ticking time bomb. In the lytic cycle, it goes to reproduction and blowing up the cell immediately. In the lysogenic cycle, it sits there. It is now a permanent part of the host's genome. Any questions? And it literally can sit there for decades, years before it gets triggered.
So like a tumor?
Nope, it's just DNA. It's just like a new gene that you got.
Would that be like HIV?
Well, yes and no. HIV generally is an active infection,
Right.
but there are something called HERVs, HERVs, human endogenous retroviruses. About 8% of all of the DNA in your body came from ancient viral infections.
So like black plague?
No, it's not harmful. It's just sitting there. The real worry is, what if it becomes infectious again? Don't worry, it's mutated to heck, it's probably not. But how wild is that? You didn't realize that 8% of your DNA is viral. Yes, ma'am.
If that does happen, would they be able to make a vaccination for it?
Yeah. Vaccinations are very easy. All you have to do is get the protein, purify it, and you got it. Mhm. That's what was so cool about the COVID vaccines, because rather than injecting you with the virus itself, which could cause a huge immune response, rather than chopping it up and injecting you with the proteins, what they did was they put the RNA from the virus into your body. But since it was a limited amount and it lacked all of the genes for packing it together, it just means your body made the proteins in enough to initiate an immune response. And then since RNA is so unstable, it just broke down, went away. Very elegant system. People thought they had I swear people are idiots. They were saying all this stuff about, oh, they designed it in 6 months, blah, blah, blah. They've been working on this stuff for 20 years. Y'all ever heard of SARS? SARS first came out in 2001, I think, 2002, somewhere around there. And SARS is a coronavirus. They had actually been working on this stuff for 2 decades before COVID hit. It's one of the reasons they were able to get it fast.
So there's multiple forms of coronavirus.
Oh yeah, there's multiple forms of every virus. You ever heard people say, why can't doctors cure the common cold? Have I heard that? There is no such thing as a cold. Did you know that? What you have, the better term would be generic acute upper respiratory infection. There are over 100 different types of viruses that can infect your lungs and cause the exact same symptoms. That's why they can't cure the cold, because there's too many viruses. Your immune system does a fantastic job. On average, a cold virus successfully infects you about once a month if you're an adult. Doesn't mean you get 12 colds a year. It means your immune system is so effective, it fights it off before it becomes what we call symptomatic. Any other questions? Let's see if anybody can get this one. What is the single most effective way to prevent a viral infection? If you want an answer, raise your hand. If you think you know it. You'll laugh when you hear it.
I feel like this is a trick question.
It is.
So nothing.
Nope, there's one thing you can do. That's the single most effective thing.
Stay away from it.
Nope. wash your hands. Washing your hands is the single most effective way to prevent spread of a viral disease.
Okay, so I used to work with cows a lot, and I used to get ringworm a lot.
You skip what?
Ringworm. Did my body develop and just stop letting me get it? Like, what happened there? Because I don't get it anymore.
That would take more time than we have to discuss because a ringworm is a parasite that is macroscopic. You can actually see it. The immune system responds differently to that with viruses. I'm just talking about viruses. Does everybody know what the second most effective way to prevent a viral infection?
I know this would sound weird, but with burning it?
Nope.
No,
Covering your house.
Nope. Because there are other types of viruses besides coughing.
Hand sanitizer?
Huh?
Hand sanitizer?
Incense.
Hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer is good, but that falls under washing your hands. Answer is vaccines. Vaccines. And now I'm finally getting around to answering your question, Carol. Smallpox. Smallpox used to be one of the leading killers. If you got infected with it, 30 to 50% of you are going to die. The last known case of smallpox in the wild occurred in Somalia in 1977. So within my lifetime, but not within yours. The UN and the World Health Organization made wiping out smallpox a priority. They set up vaccination programs worldwide that were so effective that by the mid-70s, late 70s, it was extinct in the wild. The only remaining cases that occurred after that came from lab accidents. You had one woman die a year or two after the last guy died in the wild from it. And she was infected in a lab accident. And in fact, in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a debate about whether or not they should go ahead and destroy the last remaining stocks of the virus. Why on earth would you preserve that? Well, the answer is so you can make a vaccine, right? And to the best of our knowledge, there are only 3 places left that have it. Number 1 would be the Centers for Disease Control, just outside of Atlanta. Number 2 is Fort Detrick, Maryland. That's the Army's bioweapons defense program is based there. And then the Russians have some at their facility in Morogazhnaya, just outside of Moscow. And they decided that they were debating whether or not they should do this because is it ethical to deliberately cause the extinction of the species? Before they could decide that they definitely would or would not, the 9/11 attacks happened. And somebody said, what if there is a 4th existing culture out there that we don't know about? So they have held on to it. Does that answer your question? I actually tried to volunteer for a research trial where they were taking old stocks of the vaccine and seeing if they were still viable. Vanderbilt was one of the sites, and if I allowed them to vaccinate me, I'd get paid. But unfortunately, I was one of the very, very, very last groups of people to receive it as a routine vaccination as a child. So they said, you're already protected, you're not eligible. Any questions? True or false? Antibiotics will kill a virus.
False.
False. Antibiotics are useless against viruses. Y'all like this infectious disease stuff, I see. Would y'all be okay if I gave you some more information on it now and we circle back? Or would you rather me wait until we could talk about bacteria themselves
When do we get to that part?
near the end of the semester?
I'd rather do it now so that my notes are together.
Okay. We'll just get it down, have it as one infectious disease unit. That sound okay? (1346) AD. The Crimean Peninsula, which I'm sure y'all have heard about. Ukraine, Russia, all that. This is about a century or so after the Mongols, under the command of Genghis Khan, came boiling out of the steppes and conquered most of the known world. The descendants of that horde are trying to conquer a city on the Crimean Peninsula. The Mongol general in charge, a fellow by the name of Janibeg, has laid siege to the city. Everybody knows what a siege is, right? It's where they're locked up inside, they can't get out, and you really can't get in unless you storm the gates. Siege warfare takes a while. It also requires a lot of men to be tied down in a very small space. Unfortunately for the Mongols, their men started getting sick. They started dying in droves. Soon, Janibeg had lost enough men that he could no longer maintain the siege. So he had to break camp, take his army away, and leave the city in peace. But as a last gesture of defiance, he took the corpses of his men that had died from this disease, and he put them in catapults and lobbed them across the walls into the city. Now, you know that medieval cities were not exactly the cleanest places, right? Sanitation was, their idea of sanitation was open the window and throw the poop out. Not an ideal place. Now, make it a siege situation where you've been locked in the city for months, if not years. Food stocks are getting low because you can't get ships in, you can't get caravans in, you can't work the fields, can you? You're not gonna be in the best of health, starvation conditions. What do you think that disease is going to do?
Kill them all.
It's going to hit and hit hard. One group of people that had been trapped there were some Italian merchants. They had ships, but since the Mongols had a navy as well as an army, they couldn't get the ships out. Well, once the siege lifted, they got the idea that they were going to get the heck out of Dodge. They loaded up their ships and they sailed off through the Black Sea, down through the Bosphorus, where Istanbul is today, and back up towards Italy. Unfortunately for them, they weren't fast enough. They brought the disease with them. Y'all ever heard the term quarantine? It comes from the Italian word quattro, meaning 40. Because after this event, if any ship coming into ports showed signs of disease, they would isolate them for 40 days. The original quarantine. Anyway, most of the ships didn't make it. A few did. They brought the disease with them. Some of them, the disease killed every man on the ship. There are accounts of people out walking along the beaches of southern France, and they'll come across a ship that's just beached, full of riches, and no crew, because they're all dead. But if you're one of the people that lived that, too bad for you, because guess what you just got? Everybody know what this disease is called?
The bubonic plague.
Yeah, the Black Death, the Black Plague. It was caused by a bacterium. It went round and round for the next couple of years. From 1348 to 1350, By the time it was over and done, 1 out of every 3 people in Europe was dead. Men, women, children. 1 out of every 3. Estimated death toll was 25 to 50 million individuals. That's the Black Death. Pretty wild, isn't it? Did you know that the Black Death is now endemic to the United States? The reservoir for these critters are rodents in the American Southwest. Field mice especially. If you were to get it, do you think you're going to die? Almost certainly what they would do would give you a 10-day to 2-week run of an antibiotic, probably doxycycline or tetracycline. Chances are almost certain that it would wipe that out and you would go right on just like you did never had it. This is the power of something called an antibiotic. But believe it or not, that is not the deadliest plague that has hit humanity. Question? Okay. 1918. Little event over in Europe going on. Backyard brawl, y'all might have heard of it. World War I. Lots and lots of people being killed. Fort Riley, Kansas. America is training troops to send over to Europe. You brought in people from all over the country to train them. The draft was in. They have to feed them, don't they? Good old American boys like bacon and eggs for breakfast, don't they? Means you gotta have Porky the pig and Charles the chicken, right? Or Charlotte the chicken, I guess, because you have to have eggs. But the bottom line was they didn't have the food distribution network we have today. They didn't have frozen foods. What they had to do was essentially have their own farm right there on site. And somehow, some way, a poor little Porky pig got infected by 3 things: swine flu, bird flu, most likely from a chicken, and human flu. Well, if you've got all 3 viruses in the same cell, they are going to shuffle the deck and create a 4th type of virus. This virus had genes from the human flu variant that allowed it to infect humans. It had genes from the swine flu and the chicken flu variants that had never been seen before by a human immune system. It went around the world in a couple of waves. By the time it was said and done, anybody want to guess the death toll on this one? The minimum I have seen is 50 million, which is the maximum I've seen for the Black Death. I have seen upper limits of 100 to perhaps even 200 million. Yeah, the flu. It was so novel a virus that whenever a healthy person's immune system got exposed to it, they would get a hyperimmune response, and most of the people died, not necessarily from the flu, but more likely from the immune response. And when I say this affected the world, I mean the world. There are a couple of accounts I have read of native villages in Alaska, north of the Arctic Circle, where they went marching in and every single person was dead. And here's the best part. You know what the effective treatment was? There wasn't one. Social distancing and washing your hands were about the only thing they had going. They didn't even have the vaccine at that point. That's the big worry. When COVID hit, a lot of the responses were actually based on plans they had made for a new wave of flu if it had happened similar to 100 years before. And yet I bet if I ask how many of you got your flu shot, I bet I'm the only one that's going to raise my hand. 2 of us. How many of you were alive in 2003? That was the last time I had the flu. It works pretty good. Most of you, about half of you, weren't alive the last time I actually had a flu. Pretty wild, right? Viruses are more deadly than bacteria. The Black Death, no question, it's bad. But you see that we have an effective treatment for it today. We do have some options like Tamiflu if you get the flu today. But viral diseases have probably killed more people than everything else put together. One question we get asked a lot is, why did the Europeans colonize the Americas? Why did the Americans not colonize Europe? One of the things that has been mentioned time and again from those early exploration chronicles where Europeans went across the North and South American continents was how empty the land was. There weren't a lot of villages, towns, and cities. Well, the reason for that is because when the Europeans arrived, they brought with them their diseases. Typhoid, typhus, smallpox, influenza. It's estimated that as many Native Americans died from diseases brought by the Europeans as any other major pandemic. Pretty wild. You know what the Americans sent back to Europe? I guess they got revenge in one way. Syphilis. Huh? Somebody said something?
I just say goodness.
And that is why infectious diseases used to be so dang deadly. At the first college I taught at, I taught ecology, and we actually had 2 historic cemeteries that weren't exactly across the street, but it'd be like from here to 27. And I would assign a field exercise where I had them go and they would look at the ages of people who had died. And they had to essentially pick 100 at random and assemble a demographic pyramid of it. And it always shocked them the number of children that died. Now, I remember one young lady was very upset because she had sampled 12 families and all 12 of the families had lost a child. Does anybody know what changed that? 3 things. Number 1 is probably improved hygiene. You may want to get these down. I say washing your hands, but also we do have improved water supplies, don't we? Improved sewage, wastewater treatment. 100 years ago, they did, or 150 years ago, germ theory was in its infancy, if it was available at all. They didn't wash their hands. You get an idea. Hygiene overall has improved considerably. That's number one. Number two, frankly, the medications available are much better, aren't they? Big one here is antibiotics. The third one, vaccines. Which one you want to talk about first, antibiotics or vaccines?
Vaccines.
Vaccines? Okay. The late 1700s, a British physician by the name of Edward Jenner noticed something. Smallpox had been around for centuries by then. Every so often, an epidemic would sweep through, would kill quite a few people. There wasn't really a lot they could do. But Jenner noticed something. There was a particular demographic group that was not getting infected. Milkmaids. At the time in England, most of the dairy industry was done by young women, your age or younger, maybe a little older, who would milk the cows, gather the milk, and sell it. And yet milkmaids almost never got smallpox. Jenner wanted to know why. So he did a little study, and he found that most of these young women had at some point in their life been infected by a related disease called cowpox. I think you know where they got it from cows. Well, if you're milking cows every day for several hours a day, it stands to reason you're probably just going to get exposed to the virus, aren't you? Jenner hypothesized that cowpox infection made these young women immune to smallpox infection. We know today from our studies that's essentially what it was. He tested this by taking a sore on one of the women, cutting it open and dipping the pus out. He then cut open the skin of a young boy and he smeared the pus onto the young boy. Yeah, try getting that away with that today. Well, yank your medical license faster and you can say lickety split. Didn't know better at the time. He then exposed the young man to smallpox, or the young man was exposed, I don't remember. Making Edward Jenner sound kind of like Joseph Mengele here. You all do not know who that was. Christian study. That's scary that they don't know, isn't it? Mengele was the lead Nazi doctor at Auschwitz. Anyway, it turned out the young boy was now immune to smallpox. Thus was born the principle of vaccination. George Washington actually required soldiers in the Continental Army to receive vaccination against smallpox. And as the technology progressed, the ability to do it progressed, these vaccines became routine. I remember as a child, and I'm not that much older than you, despite what you all may think, but I remember lining up in the gym. Every child went by, they would hit you with the air gun, getting your vaccinations. How does it work? You expose your immune system to the virus. That's what it does. More recently, instead of using the actual virus, they have been using pieces of the virus. The new mRNA vaccines, they just inject the RNA. Your own cells make the protein. The RNA breaks down. You're now immune. Flu is tricky because flu can recombine. Remember how I told you those three viruses got together in that one pig and made the virus from Hades? That's one of the reasons why you have to get a flu shot every year if you get one. And even then it's hit and miss because the flu season generally starts in Asia for the North American continent, they will look at which varieties are circulating in Asia and use that to guess what will be circulating in America in about 6 months. Sometimes it's hit and miss. The one that's circulating right now I know is particularly nasty. They actually put a warning for parents in the local school system around New Year's where I was about not sending your kids to school if they were sick. I don't know if Kentucky is high on the list or not, but there was a variety that just the whole eastern seaboard was really, really nasty. So what does that leave us? What was the other thing I listed? I told you 3. Antibiotics. True or false? Antibiotics have an effect on humans. Yeah, it's another trick question. Unless you're allergic to them, I want you to write this down. Unless you're allergic, antibiotics have no effect whatsoever on people.
What's the last word?
They have no effect on people.
Unless you're allergic.
Unless you're allergic. Huh?
You mean there's no bad effects? Is that what you mean?
No, there's no effect. Most people, their system doesn't have anything to do with the antibiotic. It just circulates and has no effect on you, good, bad, or indifferent. The reason I'm putting it that way is I'm wanting to dispel some myths about this. Antibiotics kill bacteria, period. They don't kill other things. You don't want it to have an effect on you, because if it did, it probably would not be a good thing. Antibiotics can kill the Black Death. They won't have any effect on you. And to put that in perspective, Jillian, you, or Miss Bell, I'm sorry, if you wanted to kill something, does bleach kill it? Bleach kills any bacteria or virus very effectively. I don't think anybody wants to drink bleach to try to get rid of their head cold. It would kill you as well. You see where I'm going with this? And that's why I'm saying it. I want you to make sure that you understand you are poisoning the bacteria and you're doing it with something that doesn't harm you. That's what makes it so amazing. Pretty wild. Everybody know how antibiotics were found? A Scottish microbiologist was studying a staph culture. Y'all have seen Petri plates, right? Bacteria just grow on the surface of it. And he went to get lunch and he left his Petri dish out on his lab bench and he left the window open because this was the late 1920s and they didn't have air conditioning. He came back and realized he left the window open and the lid off, and he hoped that he had not contaminated his colony. So he put the lid on it, threw it in the incubator, came back a couple days later to check, and guess what? Yep, it's contaminated. A big blotch of mold is growing on his plate. And this is one of those serendipitous events where a scientist happens to make an observation that most people wouldn't. Just as he's about to throw the plate out, he takes a look and he notices something strange. On the top half of the plate, the bacteria are growing fine. At the bottom of the plate is the mold. But between the mold and the bacteria is a clear zone where nothing is growing, neither the bacteria nor the mold. And he hypothesized that the mold was putting something out that was killing the bacteria and allowing the mold to effectively colonize it. The name of the mold is Penicillium. Penicillium. Does that sound like something y'all have taken? Penicillin. Thus began the antibiotic age. And if it were not for antibiotics, we would not be having this conversation. I think I told a couple of y'all about my illness, didn't I? I've not told any of you?
You said, I talked to you a little bit about it.
16 years ago, I went in for a routine dental cleaning. 9 days later, I woke up, rolled over in bed, and screamed at the top of my lungs because I had never before or since felt any pain like I felt right then. Fortunately, it was summer and I was off, and my, at the time, wife was also off, and she ended up taking me to the ER 3 separate times. The first time they said it was a pulled muscle and gave me oxycodone. Well, yeah, that put me out. 2 hours later, I was hurting as much as I had hurt this morning. They took me back and said it's diverticulitis. Came back home and I told her, I said, I've got to go back. The third time I didn't make it back home because while they had me back there on the table and I was talking to the, you saw how quickly I cut out right that? So did my heart and my breathing. I was dead for 2 minutes. Well, I found they won't send you home and tell you it's a pulled muscle or diverticulitis if you actually die on their table. They take that a little more seriously. Obviously, they got me back, and this time they actually drew blood and did a quick culture and found out I had a raging staph infection. And it had gone septicemic. It was now in my blood. And they told my wife that it was basically a coin toss whether or not I would live through the night. Turns out from that dental cleaning, I had gotten a staph infection that had lodged in the disc between my lowest 2 vertebrae and my spine. It had formed an abscess, and when I had rolled over that morning, the abscess had ruptured, spilling all of that into my bloodstream. By the time it was said and done, I was comatose for 10 days. I was in the hospital for 5 weeks. That disc is gone between the two. The vertebra got Swiss cheesed, and the top one actually collapsed into the bottom one and fused. So where y'all have got 2 vertebrae in a disc, I've got this misshapen lump of bone. And the doc told me I'd never walk again. I laughed in his face. Apparently, spite is not an appropriate thing to say motivates you. It worked. How am I here today? How am I alive? Because they were giving me the silver bullet, an antibiotic called vancomycin, $1,000 a dose. And that was in 2010. I remain to this day the only person I know that has ever been offered the opportunity to experience vancomycin. Why? Because the dosing guidelines on it basically say you have to be in a life-threatening scenario before they will dose you with it. Fortunately, they cultured it and found out it was not MRSA. Instead, it was methicillin sensitive, so they switched me from the $1,000 a shot vancomycin to the pennies a dose penicillin. 103-degree fever, 10 days, 10 months to learn to walk again. Yeah, antibiotics are good stuff. And I'm glad I'm not allergic to vancomycin. Otherwise, like I said, we would not be having this conversation. True or false? Humans can become allergic to antibiotics.
True.
True. You can pretty much become allergic to anything at any time.
If it take bites, you it can give you Lyme disease and can't eat red meat anymore.
True or false? Humans can become resistant to antibiotics.
True.
False. Antibiotics have no effect on humans. Only bacteria can become resistant. Only bacteria. Write that down. Sounds like it was a good idea we did this. The idea goes, as bacteria repeatedly get exposed to something, you kill off 99 out of 100, the one cell that survives, that's resistant, it comes back. Antibiotic resistance has become a huge, huge problem in infectious disease scenarios. Vancomycin, silver bullet, at the time, nothing was resistant to it, that's why they hit me with it. Because I had to get those bacteria out of my bloodstream or I wasn't gonna make it. No big deal. So, true or false, if you get a cold, you should get an antibiotic prescription. False. Colds are caused by viruses. Antibiotic overuse has led to increasing resistance in bacterial populations to the point where there is a real concern that there may develop some super strains of bacteria that will effectively be completely resistant to anything they have to treat them. I hadn't expected to lecture on the infectious disease stuff today, so I haven't exactly looked it up. But the last time I checked, there were strains that they thought were resistant to the mixed bug. So you all may very well start to see an increasing number of people die from infectious diseases. So they have more or less ceased to be a concern. By the time I was a kid, it's back on its way up. So what is the best defense against a bacterial infection? Wash your hands, yes. Proper hygiene, sanitizer, washing your hands, whatever you do, is the best way to not get an infectious disease.
Pneumonia is a bacterial cold though, isn't it?
Pneumonia literally means fluid in the lungs. It is generally caused by a bacterial infection.
Okay, so that kind of can present as a cold though, so just.
And remember, if you have a cold or the flu, you can develop a bacterial infection secondary to that. So if your doctor gives you, we're not done yet, we've got 2 more minutes. If your doctor gives you a 10-day run of antibiotics and you're feeling great on day 8, should you take the last 2 days worth?
Yes.
Absolutely. Always use it exactly as directed. Always, so know what you're doing. Don't insist on it. 2 years ago, I had to have emergency surgery to have my gallbladder out, and I noticed that the incision, one of the 5 incisions, was not healing. So I went to the doc, and he immediately agreed with me that it was best. But fortunately, I've got a good doctor who talks to me, he listens to me. He likes to talk shop with me. We play this little game. Every time I come in, I diagnose myself, and he tells me how wrong I am. So far, I'm batting 500. She said, that's not bad, it just means you would have killed yourself twice. But we cleared it right out. different type of medication and a cream, put them on here, and 3 days later, I was almost fine. Antibiotics are very powerful things. I would strongly suggest you look over your notes and be here on time on Thursday. I'll see you then. If you have not signed the attendance sheet, make sure you do it before you leave. Yeah, the last time I went to Colorado, I was there, I walked in. You know, it's very good. Look back at the scale. You know, it's very good. So I'm looking at the scale, I'm looking at this. And if I hadn't just seen the patient walk through my door, if I couldn't see him standing in front of me, notice it was right now, I wouldn't say it's possible. I don't know how you do it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Where it says on the whole contract,
Lydic, Lytic. That help?